Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Tonight, we return to the hour before the first word, to a world that had only breath and shadow, where the sky was a deep, unblinking pupil and the earth a quiet chest rising and falling beneath it. Nothing yet had a name. Everything yet had a rhythm. In that elder dusk, life moved by instinct and hunger. Pulled by the moon the way tides are obliged to bow. Eyes open to light and closed to night, but they did not see, they received. Hands reached, but they did not choose, they answered. The world was a cradle without a witness. Then came the interval. It was not thunder, nor a comet scratching the firmament. It was a pause, longer than any creature had endured before. In that pause the air learned to lean in. The wind uncurled like a question. Even the insects stopped their thin silver violins. What entered the world was not a thing, but a space, a hush large enough to hold a thought. From the hush a spine drew itself a little taller. A brow gathered like storm cloud. A breath delayed itself just a heartbeat longer than necessary and discovered a shore behind the waves. On that shore, something small and forever stood up inside a sleeping animal and looked back at the sea that had carried it. A spark. It did not flash. It noticed. It noticed that darkness was not emptiness. It was room. It noticed that light did not only fall, it revealed. It felt inside the cage of ribs a soft lamp kindle, and the lamp said, "Stay and look." For the first time, looking was not a reflex. It was a choice married to wonder. The first dreamer did not have a name. Names come later like clothes for weather. The first dreamer had a posture, listening. Knees bent, hands splayed on soil, head tilted toward stars that did not yet know they were being seen. The night answered with its steady choir. The pulse of insects, the braided breath of sleeping beasts, the creak of cooling stones. The dreamer gathered these sounds and, without knowing how, began to arrange them. Not with lines or cages, but with attention so patient that the world felt welcomed inside it. Awareness is a bridge no river asks for, but every river uses. When it arrives, banks appear. On one bank, hunger. On the other, meaning. Between them, a narrow span. The choice to wait one heartbeat before eating, to honor the animal and the grain with a wordless thanks. This was the first ritual born not from rule but from reverence. Reverence, in turn, taught memory to keep its lamp lit when the eyes were closed. The first dreamer slept and did not go out. The body folded its limbs like oars after rowing. The mind put down its buckets. The lamp remained. In that inner dusk, images rose like islands at low tide. A hand reached toward fire and did not burn. It understood. A face appeared in water and did not vanish when the ripples smoothed. It continued. An absence opened where an elder had been, and in the absence, a presence wider than the elder's body, a room made from the shape of love. When the dreamer woke, the world had edges. Not the edges of danger, but the crisp seam where things touched and told the truth about their touching. The cool of stone, the warmth of fur, the sound of berries falling like small moons into a woven lap. The dreamer named nothing, yet everything began to feel more itself in the nearness of that careful gaze. To be seen tenderly is to be permitted to arrive. Others noticed. The herd paused near water and found they were less afraid. A child, smaller than rain, quicker than sparrows, sat beside the dreamer and mimicked the stillness as if stillness were a game. The child laughed once, sudden as lightning. The dreamer laughed too, and in their paired voices a third tone appeared, neithers and both, a meaning carried by music. That night, a hum began in the lungs of the camp. It would someday be called song. If you listen, you can hear what the dreamer learned to hear. How fire has more than one language. The crack of hunger, the sigh of patience, the whisper of ash teaching return. How the moon is not a light but a keeper of timing, turning faces so every side will learn to shine. How grief is a salt river that never empties into the sea but keeps the heart fertile along its banks. The first dreamer tried a new thing, to hold two pictures at once, the world as it is, the world as it could become. Between those pictures, a narrow door. Through that door, hands found better ways to hold. Feet found softer paths. Mouths found words that cooled the tongue instead of burning it. From that day, the body did not only survive. It began to mean. Meaning asked for vessels. The dreamer cupped night in the shape of a story and poured it into ears. The tale had no heroes, only kin. No victories, only agreements that it ended not with triumph but with a lesson. The animal that drinks first kneels so the others will remember how to lower their heads. The listeners nodded, though they had never seen such a beast. The nod was the first prayer disguised as comprehension. The lamp inside the dreamer made a promise. To stay lit even when storms crossed the skull. Sometimes it guttered. Sometimes smoke stung the eyes. Sometimes wind barged in wearing the face of fear. Still it kept a small ember, tucked like a seed in the black pocket of the night. In hard seasons, the dreamer slept with the ember under the tongue, a taste of warmth any mouth could learn. On the morning that followed such a night, the dreamer climbed a slope and watched the sun loosen itself from the edge of the world. Light ran along the grass like a hand along a harp. Shadows lifted their skirts and walked home. The dreamer felt the entire horizon inhale once, the largest breath the body had yet endured, and exhale into a calm that did not ask for permission. In that calm, the first dreamer spoke the earliest sentence any human has ever said, though the exact words are lost. This meaning remains. I am inside a larger inside. From then on, sleeping was not collapse. It was counsel. Waking was not hunger. It was answering. The days became rooms with windows. The nights became gardens with gates. Alone became a smaller word. Tonight, as you lie down, let the lamp within you practice the old craft. Watching gently. Let your breath borrow the elder rhythm. Twice as slow as worry, twice as warm as fear. If a thought rises like a startled bird, hold out the branch of your attention and let it perch. It will leave when it is ready. All things do. The first dreamer is not behind you in time. The first dreamer is the part of you that kneels beside the river of your life and names the water hours. When you sleep, you will not go out. You will go in, to the shore behind the waves, where a hush large enough to hold a thought is waiting again. The fire began as an accident. A storm had torn through the valley, scattering branches like forgotten thoughts. When the sky broke open, lightning struck the hollow of a tree, and for the first time, the world saw itself lit from within. The first dreamer watched from a ridge as the tree's heart burned, a golden wound that breathed and sighed. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. It was awake. The dreamer stepped closer the way one steps toward music. Each flicker was a heartbeat. Each crack was a word too ancient for tongue or throat. Heat brushed the face like breath from a god that had been waiting to speak. The dreamer sat before the blaze and did not move. Night animals gathered in the shadows, eyes shimmering like forgotten stars. Some fled. Some stayed. None could look away. The dreamer whispered, "You are the light that remembers the dark," and the fire, in its endless conversation, seemed to answer. Said, "I am the hunger that gives warmth. I am the destroyer that makes room. I am the echo of the sun, torn loose so night might dream of day." The dreamer fed it twigs and watched them turn to ghosts. Smoke rose and braided into the wind. It smelled of bone and blossom, of endings and beginnings at once. The dreamer lifted a hand, and for the first time shadows moved by will. The light clung to the palm like a tame storm. It did not burn. It recognized. From that moment, fire and dreamer were kin. They built an agreement not of words, but of rhythm. The dreamer would feed it and it would teach. In return for wood, it gave warmth. In return for breath, it gave vision. Through its dance, the dreamer saw how the world itself breathed. Inhale, creation. Exhale, transformation. Around the fire, the others came. Faces glowed like dawn breaking in flesh. The dreamer pointed to the flames and said, "This is memory made bright." They did not understand, but they listened, and the listening itself became the first faith. Soon every story began near the fire. Each spark became a syllable, each ember a promise. The fire taught the dreamer that even destruction has rhythm, that endings, when listened to closely enough, hum like seeds before they split. The dreamer watched ash fall and whispered, "From what dies, the world learns to begin again." That night, the dreamer dreamed not of beasts or sky, but of the fire within, a flame that no storm could drown. It burned quietly behind the ribs, casting light on memory, on sorrow, on hope. When morning came, the fire was only embers. But the dreamer smiled. The true flame was now inside every heart that had gathered there. The age of light had begun. The dreamer wandered beyond the fire's circle, into the valley where the earth still held the echoes of its making. The stones there were cold, but they whispered, not in sound but in weight, a language older than the wind. The dreamer knelt and pressed a hand against one, feeling the slow pulse within it. The rhythm was deep and patient, the heartbeat of the world itself. The stone said, "I remember what you have forgotten." The dreamer stayed for a long time listening. In the silence, images rose, mountains rising from mist, rivers cutting through bone, roots drinking the dark. The earth was not asleep. It was dreaming beneath everything that moved upon it. The dreamer realized then that the world was alive in layers. Fire breathed above, stone dreamed below. Between them, the heart of all things beat. The dreamer whispered, "If I listen long enough, perhaps the earth will speak my name." The ground trembled lightly, as if amused. It spoke again in its slow, deliberate way. "Names are the echoes of what listens. You are not your name. You are the ear." The dreamer bowed. For the first time, humility was not fear, but recognition. As the dreamer rose, The sky had turned the color of bruised silver. Clouds drifted low, pregnant with rain. The dreamer felt a kinship between the sky and stone. One reaching down, the other rising up, their meeting written in the rhythm of thunder. A single drop fell upon the dreamer's brow. Then another. Then the storm came, and in it, the dreamer heard the music of balance. Creation's inhale, destruction's exhale. When the storm passed, the valley glistened like a memory newly washed. The dreamer took a piece of stone, smooth and weighty, and carried it close. It would remind them of the slow truths, the ones that could not burn or vanish. That night, beside the embers, the dreamer whispered to the others, "The earth speaks slowly so that we may learn patience. It teaches that everything that falls eventually becomes the ground on which we stand." The others nodded. One of them lifted the stone and placed it in the circle of firelight. Shadows danced upon its surface like hands painting invisible runes. The dreamer smiled. A story had just found its first altar, and the earth, deep beneath their resting place, sighed in contentment. The dreamer climbed the ridge again, carrying the stone in one hand and a question in the other. The sky above had cleared to a sheet of unbroken blue, its stillness as vast as thought itself. When the dreamer reached the summit, they looked upon a lake, a mirror stretched between heaven and earth. The surface was so still that clouds seemed to rest upon it like sleeping spirits. The dreamer leaned over the edge and saw a face staring back. It was not the same face that had gazed into the fire or listened to the stone. It was a face shaped by stories. It had depth, the mark of all that had been witnessed. The dreamer whispered, "Is this me?" The reflection blinked, but did not answer. The water rippled slightly as if to say, "Only while you are still." The dreamer sat beside the lake, waiting. Hours passed. The sun tilted. Light rippled across the surface like a thought trying to remember itself. At last, the dreamer saw beyond the face, into the sky's reflection, the fire's echo, the earth's memory. The reflection deepened, and what looked back was not one face, but many, the ancestors not yet born, the future not yet shaped. Each gaze within the water held a story waiting to be dreamt. A voice rose from the reflection, softer than breath. "You are not the beginning and you are not the end. You are the moment the sky sees itself in the river." The dreamer closed their eyes and felt the truth unfold like dawn through fog. The self was not a boundary. It was a meeting where fire, earth, water, and wind exchanged their dreams. Tears slid down the dreamer's cheeks and joined the lake. The ripples carried them outward, merging with the larger stillness, and for the first time, the dreamer understood what it meant to belong, not as possession but as participation. Night descended like a promise. Stars kindled above, and their reflections lit the lake below. Two skies faced each other, one of fire, one of silence. Between them, the dreamer sat, heartbeat steady, mind clear, a bridge between worlds. The dreamer whispered, "May I always remember the space between." The wind carried the wish across the water, and the lake answered with a hush, a silence so complete it felt like the world listening back. When dawn returned, it found the dreamer still by the lake, eyes open to the reflection of morning light. The sky's fire had softened. Mist curled like silver smoke, and each breath seemed to carry both the scent of water and ash. The dreamer rose slowly and felt the rhythm of the world move through their lungs. It was not merely air. It was remembrance. The same wind that had crossed deserts, whispered through forests, and sung in the throats of creatures long turned to dust. The dreamer inhaled and felt the stories hidden in that air. The cry of the first bird, the sigh of the last storm, the laughter of something divine watching itself bloom. Breath became memory, and as the dreamer exhaled, something new entered the world. Language. Not words yet, but sound shaped by intention. A low tone at first, more vibration than speech, like the hum of the earth remembering its own heartbeat. Then others joined, one voice, then another, weaving through each other until the air shimmered with harmony. They called it song. The dreamer understood. Sound was the bridge between thought and being, a way for what lived inside to find its shape beyond the skin. The first songs did not tell stories. They were stories. They moved like rivers, beginning nowhere, ending everywhere. From that day, breath was no longer simply life. It was creation. Each inhalation was an inheritance. Each exhalation, an offering. The dreamer taught others how to listen for the silence between notes, for in that space the world itself was singing. They found that even the smallest sound, when shaped by reverence, could shift the balance of existence. Children learned to hum to the earth before planting seeds. Hunters sang softly to the wind before taking life. Lovers whispered to the stars, not for answers, but to remind the heavens that they, too, were seen. The dreamer watched and felt a warmth rise behind the ribs. Not the fire's heat, not the stone's weight, but something gentler, gratitude. It was the light that required no source. That night, as they sat beneath a sky stitched with stars, the dreamer whispered a single phrase into the air. Let me never forget the gift of breathing the same air as all that has ever lived. The wind carried it away like a blessing. Somewhere, something vast and unseen exhaled in return. Night fell once more, and the dreamer lay beside the fire, its breath now steady, its light gentle. Around them, the others slept, their faces glowing faintly from within, as if the stars had decided to live inside human skin. The dreamer closed their eyes. In the darkness, they drifted past memory and into the place from which memory was made. The fire, the stone, the sky, the breath, all gathered there, not as things, but as voices. They spoke together, and their song was not of beginnings or endings, but of continuance. We dreamed you so that we could remember ourselves, said the flame. We held you so you could learn to listen, murmured the stone. We mirrored you so you could see the infinite within the finite, whispered the lake. We moved through you so you could speak the language of the world, sighed the wind. The dreamer understood then. They had never been the first. The universe had dreamed before them, through countless forms, and would dream again. Consciousness was not a crown. It was a current. Each thought, each heartbeat, each small act of wonder was part of the great remembering. The dreamers saw themselves dissolve, not vanish, but become larger. They were the tree and its shadow, the voice and its echo, the breath and the silence after. They were the spark in the ribs of time, carried forward by every creature that would ever close its eyes and dare to imagine. And as they fell deeper into that eternal sleep, They smiled, for they knew that to dream was to keep the universe alive. When dawn came, the others woke and found the dreamer still and peaceful. The fire had burned down to embers. The wind moved gently through the camp, whispering the dreamer's name, not as loss, but as return. They gathered around, and for the first time, someone said, "Let us tell their story." And so they did. The story became a song. The song became a ritual. The ritual became the pulse of time. And in that pulse, even now, the dreamer breathes through you, through me, through everything that dares to wonder. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth. Crescent Moon. End of the first dreamer.